The first question that I always ask is, why do you want this job?
I've always been interested in Seattle. I've always been interested in cities, and I particularly started to think about how I might enjoy this job and do well at this job when the CHOP uprising happened across from my store. There was something about that experience, the fact that there was some very important decisions that we needed to make as a company, but that they felt not complicated, but rather natural. We were able to stay open, unboarded, didn't lay anyone off, didn't miss any days, didn't come out and blame the city, didn't come out against the police either. We were able to exist in that swirl of activity with equanimity and calm, and it worked out well for our customers, it worked out well for the protesters who we fed, and that got me thinking that maybe I have the temperament for this work, and that's what got me interested in the job.
What was that really like then?
It was unbelievable. I mean, everything changed every day. So the first days, of course, there was protests. The protests usually started near the time that we were closing. I told one reporter that the bagels are a morning experience, and protesting is pretty much an evening activity. So we were fortunate compared to some of our neighbors that we were able to stay open. There was a smattering of protesters all day long, but I took my cue from my staff. Staff didn't express fear of coming to work. They were positive about our being able to be a positive presence in the center of it all. And so what was it like? It was different every day. Once the press started talking to us, it was a little bizarre because there were stories about earlier stories, and then there was one time where we were receiving robocalls from the Midwest trying to get me to go on the record saying that we were afraid for the safety of our staff and customers. And that was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. The same call coming in from different people all over saying, are you guys open today? And I'd say, yeah, we're open. Is there any place to park there? And I'd say, you might have to park a few blocks away. And then they'd say, it seems like everything's on fire there. And then I knew it was the same caller, basically not the same caller, but the same script.
Yeah, I think I saw like Twitter graphics or something like that. That's right across from the police precinct,
Yeah,
right?
right across from the East Precinct. And so for the first 5 days were protest days, and the next 2 or 3 weeks were after the police left the precinct. They were occupancy days, Capitol Hill, occupied protest days. And that had a different vibe altogether. Sometimes edgy, sometimes celebratory. Other times just a lot of people sitting around waiting for whatever was going to come next.
So your business didn't get vandalized or?
No, and we didn't get vandalized. We had people graffiti on our front step, and people were relieving themselves nearby. But I was careful to communicate and truly felt that I don't equate that kind of disturbance with violence at all. It was just annoyance. And when the local newspaper asked me about it, I said, if our disruption or our loss in business is part of the cost of significant social change, well then so be it. We're happy to play our part. We're going to also stay open. And so, did we have to repaint a few things? Yes. Is that a big deal? No.
That's really interesting. So, were you already a West Seattle resident when you opened your bagel shop?
No, I wasn't.
There?
I wasn't. I've been coming to West Seattle regularly for 5 years. After I fell in love with and got together with a woman here named Victoria. I've only lived here for about 6 months. But for the last 5 years, I've been coming here 3 or 4 nights a week. I take the walk up from the junction, up from my house to the junction, take the C bus to the across the Low Bridge for all those years, and then the light rail from the University Station to the Capitol Hill Station, and then I walk from the Capitol Hill Station across the park to Altana. It's about an hour.
So you don't have a car?
I do have a car, but I don't drive it when I work.
Oh.
Yeah, my daughter cannot understand why I would have an electric car and not drive it.
Is that just out of choice, or?
Yeah, it's just I find it liberating. I mean, I'm very much an urbanist. I find it liberating to not have a car in the city. When I go to a city, I love to figure out how I'm going to move around without a car, and I'll only rent a car as the last resort. So my son loves transit, and when we travel together, we're just buried in the transit maps.
I have to agree with you there, even though we live in a part of West Seattle where you pretty much have to drive to get out of it unless you walk a long way to the next bus stop. But when traveling, taking light rail or whatever, it's great to not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a better way to experience, a better way to sort of feel the spirit of the city, and I just love it.
So if you just moved to West Seattle recently, did you think about running for the District 3 or wherever you lived previously?
I didn't. I didn't seriously think about running until about 5 or 6 months ago. I thought about politics in general at the beginning of CHOP and during CHOP, and seeing, I'm just kind of feeling myself staying calm and centered. So it felt like a temperament change from in my 30s and 40s, and was able to keep that sort of in my mind. And then the other part of the decision to run, I have to say, is a little bit of frustration with how things are going as we try to emerge from the pandemic. I think it's a tremendously difficult challenge, but I think that there's opportunities that have not been met and arisen to. And that is part of the equation for me going now, deciding to run now.
Well, tell me some of the things you find frustrating then.
Well, every day I walk up from across the park from the light rail, and then I walk at the end of the day. I walk down to 3rd and Pike, and I wait for the. Some days it's super unnerving, especially after dark. And while I realize it's a tough problem, I think the city has let it go on too long. I do support the mayor's efforts of late. I think we need to serve those folks with respect and the kind of services that can help them find some other situation that's less disruptive. But it's been frustrating seeing so many businesses boarded up, seeing so many of my neighbors go out of business. The things I'm most interested in is supporting small business in general. I think I have some insights into how to run a small business and how to launch a small business and how to weather tough times. And I'm also interested in urban vitality in general and all the things that are getting in the way of that.
What do you think that the city, or the city council, and specifically since that's the role that you're seeking, could do differently? Well,
I think that they could get on board with the mayor's efforts is one thing, and I think that they need to find a way to marshal the resources to make this problem solved quicker. Whether that is proposing, I know that the jumpstart tax came through, and I know that there's other things being proposed, but I think that the sense of urgency, if it's there, I'm not feeling it on my side. I'm not feeling it as I walk downtown. I'm not seeing change in that scape.
So the jumpstart tax is okay with you as a business owner, though?
Yes.
Do you think that that revenue in general is a city problem, or that there's anything they're spending on that they probably shouldn't be spending on? They could move the money around.
Yeah, is it a matter of what they're spending their time on or what they're spending their money on? I think that the money should be spent on helping the city emerge from this stasis, if you will, that has come since the end of the pandemic. I think it's been a tough challenge. I don't have a list of specific things that I would have done differently necessarily, other than a sense of urgency. Obviously the public safety is on everybody's mind, and it's on my mind too. I think that the city's not serving itself, or it's not to allow. It's not humane to allow homeless people to live on the street for extended periods of time. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to anyone. And whether the city has a role, the city council has a role in finding the resources to provide better alternatives. I need to learn more about that.
So, in particular, though, certainly you must have an opinion on the right or wrong way to go around it. Do you think that kind of what the mayor's been doing lately, more sweeps, is that kind of the answer, or?
Well, I think they need to be paired with resource procurement. I think that you can't just move the problem around. But in general, I'm supportive of that effort. I think that not only if you have laws on the books and you just systematically don't enforce them, that makes it not only difficult for when you do decide to enforce them, but it makes it difficult for whatever law is going to come next. I don't think it's a matter of coming up with new laws. That if you did, anything that came next would be much more difficult to enforce, or if there's an entrenched set of behaviors that have become accepted. So I don't think it serves anybody to allow that to go on.
So, on other topics, for example, you show some passion for transportation. Thoughts about what you might accomplish there as a city council member?
Well, I know that the city council is part of a complicated system of agencies that work together, and I think that I would be a good voice. I mean, one of the things that I'm proudest of back at the time that I did work in transit, I worked for the Seattle Monorail project for.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I was the monorail's sole representative to the Orca card, the launch of the Orca card. This is back when we were deciding what algorithms, what transfer mechanisms, what the form factor of the Orca card would be, how it would be sold. And it was exciting to think about. I mean, it's exciting to think about how that technology does free us up to do more things with getting people out of their cars and into transit. I have a bias towards, as I said earlier, cities that are dense. So I love thinking about a vision of getting more people out of their cars. People who not only who have no other way of getting around, but people who have a vehicle and could choose it to go from point A to point B, but choose transit. So I'm thinking about how I might make the transit experience more enjoyable, what the city council's role in that could be, how the city council would help. I know that there's a mix of ways that revenue is recovered in transit, and I'm not sure what that mix is now, but I'm sure that the fare recovery has gone way down as a percentage of, fare box recovery has gone way down as a percentage of money, and one-time federal payments have gone way up. But those federal payments are a lump sum of cash that the transit agency has, but it's not going to be there forever. It's not a recurring revenue that you can count on, and when it's gone, if we're in the habit of super low fare box recovery and super low sales tax, we're going to be in a world of hurt.
So tell me more about how you got involved with the monorail project and what that role was. So
I was involved in discussions with the executives of the monorail project back in 2003 or 4. I came to them with some proposals for how to make the experience more enjoyable. I had one particular idea, which was I had come up with a system for how a transit platform could be a better offering for potential advertisers. One of the things about transit platforms and buses and any place that people are gathering for transit is that it's just a melting pot of folks. They're not gathering for any other reason than they're moving from point A to point B, which is one of the things that makes it lovely, but it doesn't make it very attractive to advertisers. And so the rates that you can charge advertisers are very low. having worked in museums a little bit, I came up with this idea that perhaps sound cones that broadcast different types of music up and down the platform would be a way of getting people to aggregate on the platform by music taste. I thought that would be a fun social energy generator, and it would give the visual advertiser who across from let's say the jazz platform a chance to know that his or her market was more targeted. I think that the monorail might have put in for a patent for this. I think that was the original proposal that I made to them. That they said, well, we like the way you think. Would you like to come on and help us figure out the entire revenue piece?
So then you joined the board? Or?
So, no, I didn't join the board. I was an employee.
Oh.
I was an employee, and because I was involved with the Orca card, I think I was one of the last employees as well. And my job was to come up with what were the different revenue sources that would help the monorail be an efficient operating entity.
So what was it like then? How'd you feel when the whole thing, eventually didn't pan out?
Well, I didn't feel surprised. I felt like while we had grassroots support for the 3 or 4 elections that we did win, we never really had as political capital. We never had support from the King County Council or the Seattle City Council or the mayor. So it wasn't surprising. We kind of got a little bunker mentality there, and that, feeling unsupported made us probably behave in ways that weren't likely to garner more support. And I think that the agency developed a reputation as kind of a rogue organization, and some of that was probably deserved.
Probably just from the way that it started too. I mean, as like what seemed like one guy's, quixotic sort of idea.
You mean Dick Falkenberg?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he was involved in the pitch, but the people voted to tax themselves. Something in that.
Yes, and now here we are, X years, 2 decades later, on the precipice of light rail, hopefully. Your thoughts on where that's going, since the city has some kind of advisory role?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it, as you can imagine. I mean, I basically vote, any transit thing that crosses my ballot it's just basically, I have to look for, there has to be a compelling reason to vote no, or otherwise I vote yes. I'm for just advancements in transit, even if they are bridges from one thing to another. I don't mean, I mean metaphoric bridges. And hopefully the west side of the city, the monorail was, as considering going from Ballard to West Seattle. Hopefully the west side of the city can share in some of that fixed rail wonderfulness. I ride the light rail all the time, and I'm a big fan. And in the meantime, it's going to be we'll have to do the best we can with what we have.
You mentioned in the discussion of the monorail that before then you had some museums in your past.
Yes.
So what is? You sounds like you have an eclectic background.
I'm interested in social connection in public places. So when I was in my early 20s, I started an oyster bar in Palo Alto with my college roommate. I'd never worked in an oyster bar before. He never worked in a restaurant before. The two of us went to our fathers, who were both doctors. We said, we have this idea, we have this insight. We think that we know a little bit about what people need from each other when they gather in the evening for a meal. And we think we can create an experience that helps them enjoy each other more. Well, those two wonderful men said, I've never heard of an idea so stupid in my whole life. They said, you are, restaurants fail at a huge rate. You don't know what you're doing. You've never worked in a restaurant. We love you, but no. But we did find a landlord in Palo Alto who said she liked the idea. And we started Pearl's Oyster Bar, and it was known as a place where people would go to really have a celebratory experience. Then we took that experience and we said, what if we tried deliberately to invent things and put them between people and have those things catalyze connection between people? And I started a company here called Entros, which was founded in 1993 and was operated until 2000. Entros was highly intentional about what could we what kind of games and activities can we invent that would help us enjoy each other more? Help me, you show me, how clever you are with trivia. Help me show you how dexterous I am with my fingers. Whatever the mix was, it was all focused on collaborative social play. So the first 15 years of my entrepreneurial career was specifically focused on that, and that interest continues to this day. Altana has a crossword puzzle that we publish every 2 weeks, and people gather at Altana when a new puzzle comes out, and they sit together over the table and they just do it together. I mean, it's just part of the vernacular of coffee shops, if you will, crossword puzzle doing, and I think it's a lovely thing to share. We do lots of other things at Altana that are designed to get people leaning forward and saying, tell me more about what's going on here. And that's basically my approach to business is we like to do things that are curious and invite people to lean in and ask us more.
How do you think that could translate to a political world here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it could. I think that one of the things about politics in general, and perhaps the Seattle City Council in specific, is they're not necessarily super skilled listeners. And I think that there's much to be learned from all of us, but much improvement in how we help people feel heard in the city. We have a method for training our staff to listen with intention at Altana, and there might be part of that could be of use.
Have you tried at any point over the last few years to speak to the council? Have you been involved in any sort of lobbying or?
I have not.
So this is so you don't have personal experience of being listened or not listened.
No, I don't. But I've been hearing from people that they feel frustrated that their issues are not being taken up. And there's two parts to that. There's actually listening and letting people feel like they are being heard. They're two separate things. There's probably room for improvement in both.
So we talked a bit about public safety. But public safety does have more to do than the current homelessness crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about where things have gone since the whole police losing officers, defund? How are we going to rehire? Where that's going? What you could advocate for?
Yeah, well, I'm for a strong, well-trained police force that is used more to handle problems that they are specifically trained to handle. I love the idea of a range of responders depending on what the issue is. I think that police probably are called upon to respond to things that they are better left to other folks, social workers, for example. I'm not that sort of up on the specifics of the Seattle police force in particular. I know that there's been a turnover in police chiefs that I'm not sure if it's the same as other cities, but it seems pretty often that the police chief turns over here, and that's got to be destabilizing for the institution. And I wonder why that is and how that could be lessened, the turnover at the top of the police department. So I was never calling for the defunding of the police. We never came out against the police during the time where all sorts of letters were scrawled on our building and on the building across the street. I mean, it just wasn't. Like my thoughts at the time was probably it's not so great to be you right now, and there's probably lots of ways that folks could lessen that pain, but I wasn't piling on that pile.
So, question I asked the last person that we talked to, do you feel that Seattle is dying, or are you optimistic?
I don't. I mean, you didn't ask, but I thought that one of the things I liked about the mayor's speech was its positivity. I know that in times when things are hard, sometimes you need to lead with positivity, and it's not just theater. It's leadership. No, I don't think Seattle's dying. I think I've been traveling quite a bit during the pandemic, and I think that a lot of cities are experiencing a lot of trouble, especially on the West Coast in general. I think that, but I think that nostalgia is not our friend in this. First of all, I think nostalgia is often misplaced, that people don't remember the bad times like they remember the good times. But I think that we need to look at what emerges from this. I mean, it's not a one-to-one replacement of the information workers in the downtown in the short run. It's a mix of other things. Great article in the New York Times the other day about smart conversions of buildings into housing. Did you see that article? Mm-hmm. It was phenomenal. It was the best digital article I've seen in a long time. And there's wisdom in that. There's wisdom in looking at a different retail mix for downtown. There's one that is full of localness, regional specificity, and a mix of small businesses and some larger businesses. But larger businesses have their issues too, as Nike Town and the theater closing in the same block. It's a tough pill to swallow.
So you haven't been in West Seattle for that long. So far in your observations, any specifics about the issues here, the pluses, the minuses, what you would, because you would be a district representative.
Absolutely. So. Well, the big floods of a few months ago were brutal for the folks that lost their homes. I thought that I would be interested to know how they're faring, whether the funds got to them in the short term, whether there's more funds coming in the long term, how they feel that they've been treated. Transit in general, how people are moving around West Seattle. Now that the bridge is back, I drive across it every now and then that I'm not on my regular schedule. It seems to be working pretty well, but I'm interested to know how people are finding that transition back to using the bridge. And my sort of main interest in looking at West Seattle over the past few years is how's the retail mix and how's the business mix. And I was saying before we started this that I think that it's a pretty nice retail mix, and it could be better. I think that there's more we could do to support businesses in the area. I think I know a lot about the life cycle of a small business and the trials and tribulations of just day-to-day stuff. And I think I would be a good advocate for the small businesses of West Seattle.
Anything else you'd want people to know about you this early in the campaign that we haven't talked about?
Well, I think that because I run a small business, I'm understandably sort of put in that category of small business operator. But I'm also an entrepreneur, somebody who creates something from a blank sheet of paper. And I think that I at first blush, I seem like the only person that is out there running that has gone from just a nascent idea to an actionable plan, from an actionable plan to an operating business, and then to operate those businesses successfully through more than a decade. I think it's a mix of talent and temperament that I think would be put to productive use in Seattle City Council.
Thank you. We will talk again.
You're welcome.